Did you
Yeah,
get
so
some
Friday was a little bit.
rest?
Say it again. You're breaking
Did you
up a
get
little
some
bit.
rest? You feel better?
Yeah. I'm getting better. It's just it was just like on Friday I had to go to this circumcision of a friend of mine, and the the it was just like it was there, and it was just like I just had this like big headache like leaving there, and then I had to go shopping for Shabbat, and it was just so many things going on. So it was just like I just felt like what, I wouldn't be fully present in the share the way that I wanted to based off what was going on. So that's why I kind of rescheduled it. But either way, yeah. So we're there, just a little congestion. I mean, it's not like crazy. I feel like I sweated a lot of it out over Shabbat. Like you wake up and you have like a little perspiration. So I feel like a lot of it I sweated out. My system pushed it out over Shabbat, but
That's
it's all
good.
good. Okay, so we're back in this idea of Rav Ashlag and dealing with this idea of reality, challenging reality, trying to understand reality. This whole thing, and keep in mind that everything we're learning about Rav Ashlag is just an introduction to the study of a text called the Zohar, right? And so his whole perspective is like you have to at least have these base ideas to be at least to even be able to understand, what's being written, what's being communicated, right? And so over here, what we're learning is that we started from the stage of understanding. I'm not going to go through the questions, right? I'm going through the points of execution, right? So the soul comes down into this world, with this desire to share. It comes into the body. It engages in this new desire to receive. This new desire to receive is there, and so what God does is that He creates darkness as a mechanism for us to be able to not just be stuck in the desire to receive, but rather desire to reunite with the Creator, right? And so the idea is the Torah and the mitzvot. The Torah that we learn is the process, is the plan of creation that the soul is to come into this world and go through a correction in the body. And so the Torah and the mitzvot are the mechanism to do it, right? And then so we have another mechanism that also does it, which is life itself, right? But the problem is that it comes to a process of suffering, right? And through this process of suffering, we ultimately, achieve the perfection, or we could do it through Torah as well, but ultimately we achieve the perfection, which is the soul going from the desire to receive for oneself, but for the desire to receive for one for sharing, and thus the soul's correction is achieved. And then, as the soul's correction is achieved, the soul will be required to come down at a later day, and it will be resurrected. And then, when it's resurrected, it will be given a new body, and this new body is the mechanism of of sharing, right? It's a new body. So the body and the soul will be totally connected together, right? And they'll be both in this higher consciousness of existence where they no longer have this desire to receive, but rather this desire to share, which allows them to expand and extend and to become a part of this amazing experience called godliness on earth, right? And so that's what we're dealing with right now. And so when we think about it, just a point. I was actually going to write about this, and I may still write about it. I don't know, but after I say it, maybe I may not have such a strength to write it. But I think I should still write it. But when we talk about the Torah, we're talking about the world around us. Now we have the books and we have these teachings, and these teachings and these books are there to guide us to a higher consciousness that we can walk out around us and see the Torah. Because God is teaching us the Torah all the time, right? It's all around us. Everything you see is the teaching of the Torah. Everything you see, right? And so what you see is the Torah. So I'll give an example. So based off of what we're learning about this idea of the new body, and this new body being connected to this process of the resurrection of the dead, and the process of the resurrection of the dead comes to this process of the perfection of the soul. That maybe we can look around us and see a lot of the cosmetic surgery and the desire for the public for the cosmetic surgery, or at least by the non-Israel people, they're obsessed with it, right? And unfortunately, some of us too. But the point is just saying that they're obsessed with it and it's their identity. But maybe they're teaching us to be aware of this idea of the true body, that the body that we have the body that we have is the body that we have is a, is a temporary body, and the true body is everlasting body. And so maybe we could see around us when we see all these women in this who look perfectly fine, wanting to desire this new existence. That's all through basically creating a new body. So maybe the root desire of all of that is is this idea of the desire of the soul for something in the future, right? And sometimes we don't know about the Torah and the mitzvot. We will desire the future reality, but we won't know how to get there, because part of getting there is through the correction of the soul, through the keeping of the Torah and the mitzvot. That correction of the soul allows us to have clarity on how to manifest that future reality. Without the Torah and the mitzvot, we would think, okay, the future body, okay, I just go to a surgeon and I pay $20,000 and I have a new physical expression. Anyways, so that's the idea, is to be able to not just learn the study for the sake of, okay, this is what we're learning and this was being said, but no, this is a new frame of reference to go into the Torah itself and its spiritual mechanism. So it says Be'akarei kol hama vir. It says nifrat lanu she'el. So he says, okay, so we're going back to the first question. And it says, what is our essence? So now he brings us the answer. Given all of the above, the first inquiry is also answered. We ask, what is our essence? The answer is that our essence is identical to the essence of the particulars in the world, which is none other than the desire to receive. So the
But,
essence of us, this essence is the desire to receive. He says, discuss
Rabbi,
it. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
are you able to share the screen?
Oh, I didn't even do that. Sorry. Jeez. Thank you. Hold on. I thought I did share screen. Okay. Perfect. Sorry about that. Okay. All right. Perfect. Okay. So he says, well, okay. So it's saying, okay. So it says like this. He says, well, let's go back a little bit. Okay. So okay. So he asked the question, what is our essence, right? That was the first thing he asked us way back in the beginning. What is our essence? What is the essence of the human being, right? Because at the end of the day, these are the questions we got to ask ourselves. What are we? We can't be scared to ask these questions, right? And even if you don't agree with Rav Ashlag's perspective, okay, fine. You don't agree. He got this from his teachers. Okay, fine. Here's a whole lineage, right? Okay, fine. But at least be able to understand that the question has existed, right? And that question should fill in the blanks, right? And you should seek scholars and information that answer those questions, and we shouldn't be shy about it. So he says the answer is that our essence is identical to the essence of all in the world, right? So our essence is no different than the world around us, which is what? None other than a desire to receive, as we discussed in Desire 7. But yet, this desire to receive is not in the way we imagine it in the second stage, which in the selfish desire to receive, instead, the desire to receive is in the way that things are in the first stage, within the Ein Sof. That is, the desire to receive has its external form, which is receives in order to give satisfaction to the Creator. Okay, so what I'm understanding here is that he's saying like this. He's saying we want to understand the essence of the human being. The essence of the human being is the desire to receive, right? Just like all of creation around us. He said, but it's not in the same way, right? It's not in the same way when it says a desire to receive. He says not in the way that you imagine it in the second stage. So what was the second stage? The second stage is that the soul is in a place of correction, right? And so the Torah and the mitzvot is the process in the second stage for the soul to get to the future reality. In the first stage says, hey, this person has a correction, and here's the future reality, like side by side, right? So one is the life you got to live through, and then in the other part is the world that you're going to experience, right? So that's the first stage. The second stage, right? And we should have talked about this earlier, but the second stage is the dynamic where the soul corrects itself, right? Through the Torah mitzvot. And then the third stage is where the soul is corrected, and then the body becomes corrected only by God. Okay? So he's saying it's not like you think in the second stage. This is the point. He says, yet this desire to receive is not the way we imagine it in the second stage, in which a selfish desire to receive. Instead, it is the desire to receive is the way that things are in the first stage. Okay, so he's saying so this desire to receive is connected to the world of correction in the future world, right? Not necessarily in the stage of the physical work of correcting the soul, but basically the stage that's set. And he's saying that instead of the desire to receive in the way that things are in the first stage, within the Ein Sof, that is the desire to receive that has an external form, which is which in which it receives in order to give satisfaction to the Creator. So it says, "Afal pi she'ar lo." So it says that even though we have not arrived at the third stage, we still have not had enough time to develop. This is not this does not detract from our essence. That is because the third stage follows inequivocally from the first stage, and the phrases in the paraphrase, a Talmud principle, a debt that stands to be collected is considered as it is already collected. Not having enough time to develop is only a problem if there is a doubt about whether the process will fully develop to perfection in the time available, right? So, so, what he's saying is this idea of being able to look at this second stage and this first stage, right? And so this first stage is saying that there's a process to evolution, as where the second stage is dealing with the evolution itself, right? And so he's comparing it to this idea of saying that in the future reality, these things are going to happen. So it's as if they already exist, right? He says, and since we have no doubt about that at all times, since developing from stage one to stage two to stage three is inequivocal, it's going to happen. It is as if we have already achieved the third stage. So in a way, we've already in that future reality, right? Where the soul is being reincarnated in the resurrection of the body. And he says, the body is given to us for now with its problematic form, but does not damage our essence, which is the body. Since the body is everything, requires to be completely eliminated together with the source of impurity. So what is he saying right here on this point? So as we heard about earlier, that when we are buried in the ground, that the body, the soul does not emerge to the heavens until the body itself is completely decomposed. When the body is completely decomposed, then we're able to go up into the heavens, and then we come down into this world, right? And we're given a new body, but this new body can only exist is a body of complete sharing, right? So he's saying that the essence, he said it's not the same desire to receive in the same way of the physical body and the earth, but rather it's a frame of desire to receive that this process of overcoming the body consciousness will lead us to another chapter, which is the complete connection through sharing, right? And he says, and anything that will be equivocally will be burnt as considered as is already burnt. So it says in Malachot, it says as if it had never existed. He says imnam hanefesh. So he says, however, this is not true of the soul. The soul, he said, the soul enclosed in that body, the essence of the soul is the desire not to receive, but to give. This is the essence when the soul comes down, which is flower to us from the system of the four sacred worlds, right? And so the four sacred worlds that we talk about is that there's the world of absolute, the world of emanation, the world of Bria, the world of Yitzira, the world of Yitzira. Wait, no, the world of Yitzira and the world of so the world of, hold on, I just want to get straight. So the world of Absolute, the world of Bria, the world of Yitzira, and the world of Asiya, right? And so those are the four sacred worlds. So I just wanted to stop here before we go on to um, the next chapter. But it ends off saying, because I'm gonna come on, he said it will exist eternally. The form for the form of desire that gives the equal in form to the light force of living is therefore not temporary. We shall discuss more in chapter 34, 32. We're going to keep going, but I want to at least get some thoughts, reflections on where we're at, see we're on the same page.
No, no, we're just following right now.
Okay. So I just want to go over it. So basically, in essence, what we're learning about is this idea of saying that the the three experiences of perception, right? One perception is the world that we are in now, and then the future world, right? And we know that that process of getting to one world to the next comes through our spiritual work and our voda. But that's just the context, right? That's the setting. The actuality of that setting is in the second and third stage, which is one is the correction of the soul, right? And the correction of the soul is done through the Torah and the mitzvot, like Shabbat, this, loving thy neighbor, loving, this thing. It corrects the soul, and that soul goes through this process until it's corrected, and then it goes into the grave, and then the body dissolves, and then the soul goes up to the heavens, goes up to Gan Eden, right? The soul comes back down and is given a new body versus given the old body in a physical form, and God heals it in front of them, and then gives them another body, right? And this another body is the body of the future reality. So the point is just saying that all these things exist now, even though we have to go through the experience, right? So go ahead,
Yeah. All right. Okay. So it makes you think about just the whole process. Like let's pretend we're carpenters, just so I can get good understanding. We're carpenters, okay? And so a carpenter goes to a draftsman or architect. He draws the plans. The carpenter says, "Look, this is what I want to build. I want to build this particular building." And the draftsman draws up the plans, the measurements, everything. It's all laid out on paper. And so that carpenter knows exactly what the end result is supposed to look like. So what he does is he goes and he says, okay, let me go and get all of the guys that I need, all the tools that I need in order to complete this task. And so I know exactly how many days it's going to take. I know, well, kind of sort of know how many days it's going to take. But now I'm entering into that second stage of actually taking what's on paper and now working it out. And now we're going through it, all the ups and downs of the building process. We're building it, framing it, wrapping the house. We're doing everything to this house. And then one day we are done with the house. The house is sold. Customer moves into the house or the building, right? And they cut your paycheck. And now you're in a better place than you was when you first started, even though you had the whole plan in front of you, because now you got the paycheck. Before
yeah.
you didn't have the paycheck, but now you got the paycheck in the last stage.
No, beautiful. The key thing I got, what you're saying, first of all, is very eloquent. And the thing is, you're explaining that there's different parts, right? For other people who are listening, like that there's different stages in this process, and the stages are already laid out. The blueprints are already laid out. And our job is to participate with that game plan and those rules and that petition, and we go through that process. And at the end of it, we experience something greater, which is this paycheck. And the paycheck is like endless possibilities, endless expressions of that, right? And so you're bringing that thing together. And so this is the outlook, right? This is the outlook about God. The system is already laid out. What we're supposed to do, what we're not supposed to do, how we're supposed to live, how we're supposed to eat, and we correct our soul. We're here to be humble people that just we work it. We're Jacob, right? We're here to humble ourselves and live in a humble way and correct our souls, live in peace, promote peace, and live, live as righteous, right? And so this process of being clear and having clarity of of what this system is allows us to dive into the halacha, to dive into the laws even deeper, because now we understand this is why we're here. We're here just to serve God. How do we serve God? By His commandments, right? And so we're going to continue on, but yeah, I just wanted to check in because you guys definitely have it 100%. So we just continue on, okay? So Okay, so we're going to continue on, and he says like this. It says, "Ve'ela isura levech achad da'at." So he says, and if we do not pay attention, he says, do not pay attention to those philosophers who claim that the essence of the soul is intellectual substance, that is, the soul is actualized only through the knowledge of it, that it acquires. That is, the soul grows from knowledge to knowledge in all of its being, according to theory. The eternity of the soul, which after death depends entirely on the extent on to which the soul has acquired knowledge. In the absence of knowledge, nothing is left of the soul to remain. This is not the Torah's view, and the heart rejects this opinion. Anyone who has ever acquired knowledge knows that it is the external acquisition, not the essence of one who acquires it. So he says, like, people. He says, so they have people who exist and say, hey, you know what? The essence of the soul is what you. It's like basically they're trying to say it's an empty barrel. And so whatever you throw inside this barrel at throughout the lifetime is what the soul is made up of. So people want to read Greek philosophy and all these different things and say this is how you know the substance of a man. And he says, no, this is not the Torah's view. The Torah view is that the essence of man is the desire to receive. Although there is maybe additions a person could add through the life of experiences, but those are only affecting the external aspects, but not the internal aspects. So it says Ella kadme ir. So he says rather, as it explained, all the substance of the new creation, whether the substance out of which is made spiritual things, or the substance out of which made physical things, is nothing other than the desire to receive. He says, we have said that the soul is made up of entirely of a great desire to give, yet that is only due to the repair that occurs when the reflective light is enclosed. The soul that is the light is received from the upper worlds. That is he says that light is received from the upper worlds, and then from where it comes, I explain the matters of the clothing. He says in another book, he says, still the essence of the soul remains the desire to receive and see the sources of sin. He says, and for the thing that distinguishes one example of a thing from another is not its substance, but its will. So he's saying what he said is he's arguing against the point of the philosopher says it's not the substance of the soul, but the will of the soul, not what makes it, but the intelligence that makes it what it is, the desire itself that makes it into this. And he says, for the will in every instance produces needs, in those needs produce thoughts and knowledge to the same degree. As the needs, then the creature can go, and he says go and acquire that is required to fill its needs. Just read this part again. So for the things that distinguish one example of a thing from another is not its substance, but rather its will. So he's saying what makes something different from another thing is not its substance, but rather the will of it, the core intelligence of that entity. For the will in every essence produces needs. He says, and those needs produce thoughts and knowledge. So he's saying, so why is he saying the difference between one thing versus another is substance? He says it's not substance versus will. He said because the substance is basically what's just there, it's floating, right? But the will is which reflects the needs of the entity. And he says, and the will itself produces the needs, and it produces the thoughts and the knowledge to the same degree as the need. So the bigger the desire, the greater the need for these other areas. Then the creature can go and acquire what is required to fulfill its needs. Ukeshem, he says, Sarah so told B'nai Adam. So he says, people's desires different from one another. Just like, as you guys see with kids, some kids have more of a desire this way, one kids desire that way. Similarly, their needs, thoughts, and education difference. For example, there are those who desire only to receive animals' desires, and their needs, thoughts, and education are designed to fulfill those animals' ones. He says, there are intellect, though their intellect and knowledge is like a human. Hold on. He says, he says, he says, he says, he says, through the intellect and knowledge is still the slave is like the master. The intellect is therefore an animal-like intellect, since it is enslaved in the animal desire. There are those who desire focus on human wants, such as honor or power over others, wants that animals do not have. Such people will focus their needs, thoughts, and education on those human desires to the extent possible. Those who desire will receive a link in they will try they receive they desire to receive is linked to intellect, understanding, and their focus their needs, thoughts, and education to fulfill their maximum desire and extent. So this is important, right? Because like, why are people? Some people are more ambitious than others, right? Why is it? Why is it that you, Otina, why is it you have this desire to sit and learn with me every day in the morning when there's people all over the world that don't even, I mean, I said Otina, sorry. So that are not even, even care, right? Right? Why are people doing this? Why do people care? Like I said, Otino, like why does he want to learn? Why does these other guys, why these other groups want to learn? There's no responsibility from them, but it's the desire of the soul. He says, "Ve'elu gimel amine amarei sonot mitzvahim al pinei." So he says for the most part, people possess all three kinds of desires to different extents, but the a mixture of those different needs differ from person to person. This explains the difference between individuals. People differ from one to another physically in ways that are parallel to the way they differ from one another spiritually. So that same ambition you see when people, like some kids are in school or just they're just going through everything, and you have other kids that are not there, right? You have kids that are in other things. They have a certain desire in another way, right? And so when we look at people, we don't look at people in terms of their substance. We look at it in terms of their desire, right? And so everyone's impressed by the guy or the girl who comes from the inner city, they come from the difficult background, and they make it out, as they say, right? But the reality is that's an expression of desire, right? And the same thing for the person who even thinks they grew up in the suburbs and goes and finds their own mind, their own will. That's a level of desire, right? She says, Be'ifun shega nishamot b'nei adam. He said, so the spiritual souls of people who've only desired to great sanctification to their creator, it comes from the power of the reflective light that they receive from the upper worlds, which they, the souls, come and desire to grant sanctification to the creator. This is the very essence of the soul. So he's saying these souls that come into this world, like you guys, like me, like all these other people that say, hey, I want to sanctify myself with the Creator. I want to be one with the Creator. Our soul comes from a particular place in the upper worlds, in the heavens. When we talk about those souls that come down with this immense desire to sanctify God, to be one with God, those souls come from a particular place in the heavens. And then we're going to learn that there's souls that don't have that desire, right? And they come from a different place in the heavens. And it's not to say that one's bad and one's good, but it's just to understand why the desire is the way that it is. He says, this desire brings great satisfaction to the Creator. It is the very essence of the soul. It follows that when a person becomes enclosed in a body, its soul's birth within the person the needs, thoughts, and education needed to fully grant that satisfaction to the Creator's um, uh, I don't know how to say his word, to the soul's desire, to the parameters, I don't know, the portrayals of the soul's desire, right? And he says, Uve hayod asam. He says, on the other hand, the essence of the body is selfish to receive. All of its experiences and everything it acquires feels its deficit desire to receive, which has initially created only to be destroyed and eliminated from the world in order to reach the perfect third level and the end of the repair. This is why the body, along with its acquisitions, is lowly and mortal and temporary, like the passing of the shadow, which it leaves nothing after it. So he's saying that the body, this whole thing is that the body's temporary, right? And even though the body's always going to be selfish, it's always going to convince us of things that we don't need, it tells things that are not true. But either way, the body is still has a holiness because it plays a part in the role of the soul sanctifying itself. Uve hayod asam umehod shelan ha nefesh rach ratzon. So he says, in contrast, the essence of the soul is the desire to give. So the pure essence of the soul, it wants to give, as we talked about from the heavens. And in all of its experiences and everything it acquires is filled with the desire to give. It remains internally in the first stage. And in the future third stage, it is therefore immortal and permanent. And it is everything it acquires are eternal and living forever. They are not at all affected by the non-being of the body's death. On contrary, the absence of the defective body form after death greatly strengthens the soul, allowing it to ascend. So the people who passed away, the people who went over, they were actually able to ascend to a higher level of experience of their existence. The body is temporary. The lifetime is temporary. We're only here for a short amount of time, and we're supposed to do certain things. And when we complete that soul, when the soul completes its correction, that's it. That's why when people pass away in our life, we look at it like, oh, how could you leave me, Hashem? How could you take this person away? This person finished their job. Everybody has a specific amount of time they're supposed to do their job. This person finished their job. And so the job that this person finished was done. And so they corrected the soul. We are still working on it. So he says they are not only affected by the non-beings of the body's death, but on contrary, the absence of the defective body after death it greatly strengthens the soul, allowing it to ascend to the heights of the Gan Eden. Uni tava'ar, it says hativ, and he says thus. So he says thus it is clear that the internal it is clear that the eternity of the soul does not depend upon the knowledge of the soul acquires, as the philosophers have suggested, but rather the soul's eternity is the very essence, is essential desire to give, but knowledge that the soul acquires is its reward and not its essence. Thoughts, reflections?
I was just thinking about the different ways in which people learn. And when you were bringing up about like children, I remember just like some of my older children, how you're trying to teach them the same thing, but it's like they're just not getting it, and it's and you feel like, oh, why are they not getting it? Why are they not getting it? And then when you implement a different way of presenting it and helping them, it's almost as if like a light bulb just goes off. And so maybe, this child learns better through just reading, and another child learns through visual, but it's like it was already there on the inside of them, and this is what their soul desire. That's kind of what I was just kind of thinking as you were kind of going through it. But then also that we get that next level once the body transcends from life to death and begins to go through that decay and so forth. Then we get a whole nother level of, I guess, understanding or connection to what the soul actually wants.
Existence.
Existence. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So that's just kind of what my thoughts were.
Well, what stood out to me was it brought my mind back to just when you talked about like Greek philosophy and basically philosophy. Um, you know, Freudian concepts of psychology is based upon the idea that we move and we do what we do because of external stimuli. Okay, and so that external stimuli basically guides and leads our every step. So what is being taught now is that the Torah is teaching us that the very opposite, because what it's teaching us is that it throws the whole idea that I'm a product of my environment, basically. So that whole concept, I'm a product of my environment, is a crutch that is false and it should never be used. But rather, I already have the blueprint. I already have the desires. I have the information already internally within my soul. And instead of me absorbing like a sponge from my environment and let my environment teach me, I'm going within to where the creator is hiding that truth. And what is happening is that now through the technology of the Torah, which is the only way that these things are going to be unlocked. So through the actions of the Torah, they're unlocking these secrets, these secrets that's in this supernal place. And so because of that, because of the training and the way that this society has framed our understanding of ourselves and the world around us, we will never reach our full potential. Exactly. But if we understand Torah and we walk in this truth, then we're unlimited. There's no limit to what will be unlocked as far as in our being and in our purpose, and what we can see great things, really great things coming out. Because I think about like going back to children. If children are taught that they are the product of their environment, then that child now has to agree with this environment and say, this is my lot in life, right? But that's inconsistent when you know life stories of like Dr. Ben Carson, and different people that grew up in very harsh environments, in hard situations, but they were able to rise to a higher level of being. You see,
and when you brought up about the Shabbat too, it just the keeping of the Torah and learning, like you said, the technology, the understanding of how to apply, and what we're doing right now, just desiring to learn and grow more, and just opening up the possibilities to what is already on the inside of us. I understand that many people, are trying to understand how to keep the Sabbath, but it doesn't really like resonate until you start to actually do it, and then it's like so many things just start like, oh wow, we should, really follow and do this and do that. And then you understand, like, okay, this just makes so much sense as to how Hashem has already mapped it out in the Torah. It was already there on the inside, but we just didn't have that understanding. It's like, deep down, I want to keep the Sabbath. I want to follow Hashem's ways. But until you kind of connect that, I don't know if I'm gonna say intellect, because I think it was kind of talking about, not so much with the intellect, but just more of what was already deep seated in the soul. But when you begin to start to go in the direction of Torah and seeking Hashem, it's as if the soul just gets awakened more. You see the beauty and you understand the process. Is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We want to be able to, to at least define that there has to be an approach to the Torah, right? And I hold by Rabbi Ashlag, but there's it's not like people disagree. You're going to hear the same things amongst people in this part of the world and that part of the world, in this century, that century, but but different people have different perspectives on how to get there, right? And so, by me, I'm Rav Ashlag, but the point of this study that we're doing is to say that there is an approach to learning the Torah. There's an approach to what the system is even trying to convey. Why is the book even here? What's going on? Why, this is what they say is an introduction to Kabbalah, to the Zohar, but it's really just an approach to life in general. You know what I mean? And the 5 books of Moses, and why are we reading this? And we're in the book of Shemot, and we're hearing all this. Why are we suffering? What was going through? What was God trying to get us to? And he had the Redeemer, this, the whole thing. But if you have an approach to why the soul comes into this world and the process that the soul goes through, now we can understand what God is trying to teach us through the nation of Israel, or the soon-to-be nation of Israel at this point, right? And so that's the main study. The main study is to be able to have an approach. So when you have your students, you have families, these are the things, because other than that, they're going to carry whatever they learned from the past into this study of the truth. You going to say something? Yeah, go ahead.
Going back to the parasha, the Torah portion, there was 2 areas that really stood out to us that actually bring us, that reminds us of what Ashlag is actually, Rav Ashlag is actually expressing. The first one was when Hashem is communicating with Moshe. And what's happening is that Moshe is basically saying, hey, this is, who am I to go to Pharaoh? Who am I for you to send me? And which is humbleness. But Hashem tells him, he says, your sign that I'm sending you, that I'm with you, is that you will be back in this mountain worshiping me with the children of Israel. And it's like, wait a minute, why is that the sign? Why don't you give me a sign while I'm going? Why don't you give me a sign while I'm here? But the sign is the completion
Nice.
of what you're telling me to do. And the second one was, going back to those 3 days, is that he tells Moshe to tell Pharaoh to let my people go a 3 days journey, to worship me and to sacrifice unto me. And I was like, wow, that was just like just standing out. That here's the process. Here's the process right here. He said that it is only supposed to take us 3 days, three stages, but it seems like it's taking a lot longer. But there is but I think it's very, very powerful to also understand and have that approach, to understand that even to really start this process, there's adversity, that there's a force that is trying to push against us to prevent us from even starting the process.
Yeah, I really resonate with that first point, both points, but the first point I really resonate with with that is a very brilliant observation. Is the dynamic of when God is talking to Moshe is really that first stage, right? He's outlining the first stage of the soul, which is like, here's what you're at, here's the future reality, right? And then the second stage will be part of that work that they go into, which is the confronting of the Pharaoh and speaking to them. That's part of the work of the soul, keeping the Torah, right? And then you could say that the third phase would be kind of like the Exodus, right? That would be the complete correction of the neshama type of a thing, and they get this new body, that allows them to receive, but on a micro sense, not the full redemption that we're talking about, but in the frame of that structure. But yeah, you brought that up. It's very deep. So yeah. So anyway, so let's stop here because we're going to go into another section. I don't want to confuse the sections, but the key thing is on this aspect is being aware of the intelligence of the soul, which is the desire to receive, and the essence of the soul is the desire to receive, but not in the way of just the idea of correction, but saying that the correction is a part of the desire to receive, but it's not limited to that, right? It continues on past that, right? Because we want to continue to receive Hashem's light to a degree, even though we have the corrected body. So the essence still has this aspect, but it's not the external component that we're dealing with in this stage two, if that makes sense, right? And that type of thing. So that's the approach. So yeah, so this is the way to go in and read, especially these parshiot in this book of Shemot, is to really connect to that process, right? And so what we're going to do going forward on Wednesday when we come back, we're going to do Rav Ashlag, but then we're going to go and do a halakha study afterwards, okay? Because it's like we're going to the very high levels, and so it's very healthy in the learning to bring it down to something even practical that may not connect per se as a halakha, right? So like today we were learning about the laws of Birkat Hamazon. I mean the law, no, not Birkat Hamazon, but Hamotzi, eating a meal and these types of things and the blessings. So we're going to bring back the Shulchan Aruch on Wednesday, and so we're going to do both, and so we'll balance it out and we'll keep going. But you guys are at an advanced level, so it's very important for you guys. You guys know the Bible. You guys grew up in it. You're teaching it, the whole thing. So the thing is now is to say, okay, well, let's deal with perspective, right? And that's why it's important for us to learn Rav Ashlag is to really get perspective. As well, some of the other students come from kind of like more of a Kabbalah background, so you had to focus on more grounded type things, So like the path of the just, these types of things that are more like in the moment of life, right? And so anyway, so yeah, so we're doing that. So any last points, any ideas? You good? Okay, we're good. We're good. We're gonna keep pushing it. Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Le'olam Amen. 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 Have an amazing week, Shabbat Tov, and